Yeah. Pro Fan Sports Podcast. Let's get it. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam. Sean on the mic, very flat too. Keep you updated, that's what we do. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Pro fans, tune into the program. Every single week, get the dope, fam.
Welcome back, everybody, to Pro Fan Sports Podcast. I am Vladimir. I am with Barry, and we have a special guest today, Josue Pavón. He is a Celtics reporter / writer at CLNS Media, and he co-hosts the Cedric Maxwell podcast with Cedric Maxwell. Welcome back to the podcast, Josue. How you doing?
I'm good, fellas. Thank you for having me back on. I appreciate it.
I think it's been like 2 years. You were one of our first couple of guests that we had. I think maybe you were like second or third guest that we had.
Oh yeah. Oh, is that right? I didn't know that.
It's been like 2 years already.
Oh, we coming full circle, man. This is a good time to do one of these for sure, man. At the end of the regular season for sure.
And just like you said, the regular season ended yesterday with the game against Atlanta. Mm-hmm. Right? We beat Atlanta. What's your take on the season? Like the whole season, how do you feel about it? The ups and downs. Are we ready for the playoff? But first, what's your take on the season itself?
I think it's a success. I mean, I think that's the best way to put it, right? In terms of seeing this team go out and reach specific goals, I think they did that. Whether that is, winning 50 plus games, maintaining that 1-2 positioning at the top of the conference. I mean, it's funny the way Joe Mazzulla put it. He's like, man, we had number one, and he didn't say it this way. I'm paraphrasing a bit, but he was like, man, we had number one, and then the team went and won 20 straight. Now, of course, the Milwaukee Bucks winning 19 had a whole lot to do with them grabbing the number one seed and never letting it go. But the Celtics obviously didn't make they made things easier for the Bucks, right? Especially when they won those, they lost those 3 in a row. During that road trip. They lost to teams that on paper a lot of people are saying like, man, that was ones that if you win those games, then you're number one. That's true, to a certain extent, obviously, especially when you pinpoint specific losses. But I think overall, I mean, seeing how this team finished is worth mentioning. The past couple of weeks, winning, what is it, 7 out of 9 or 8 out of 10, finishing the season strong. I think there's a lot to be said about that because they were able to rewrite those mistakes that we saw during those games that they were losing on the road against teams that were under 500 or battling just to make the playoffs. So I mean, that's been the identity of this team, right? Showing up against the big name opponents and coming up short against teams where they necessarily shouldn't, giving up big leads. I mean, we haven't seen those kind of those bad habits in a while, and I think a lot of that has to be said about the growth of this team overall. What happened last year obviously carried over to a certain extent, and the fact that they got out to such a good start and where their focus was into getting back to the NBA Finals, and they took their lumps as most teams are going to do. But I think the way they finished strong. It says a lot about who they are as a team. So, to answer your question, long form, it's a success. It was a successful season for these guys, and especially for someone like Joe Mazzulla, his first season as head coach in the NBA, which is of course never easy for any head coach.
Yeah. I don't know. It's definitely a success for me. I think they came up short just a little bit because I thought they could have gone for that number one seed. And I thought they could have gone for that 60-plus win season because they had a couple of losing streak during the season that made me question if they're ready for prime time. You know what I'm saying? And just like you said, they sometimes they would play up to the opponent, right? Like the big teams, they'll play really well, and the not so good teams not so well. So that had me question. Is that a question for you? Like the losing streaks during the season, us not showing up consistently over time?
I mean, the bad patterns in the sense of when the offense goes stale at times, and Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown kind of want to take matters in their own hands, and maybe it's not what's best for that specific game a little bit, but in the sense of this team not showing up, that's the part of this season that I don't think we're going to see again, because I think the Celtics team, in terms of effort and showing up to play against top-notch teams, I don't think it's going to, going into the playoffs, I think they take things up to another level in terms of their focus. But, throughout the struggles, especially when the offense isn't clicking as much, and, the three-point shot isn't falling, the sort of recipes, the sort of symptoms of a Celtics loss that we saw a lot throughout the course of the regular season. Yeah, there's some concern about that. But I mean, that's just going to happen with any team. You worry about, or you got an eye out for when those bad habits are going to come back again, but you're interested in seeing how the team's going to respond because of how much we've seen thus far. And obviously, an 82 game sample size is the best way to evaluate a team. And I just feel really good about where they are, where their mindset is.
No, for sure, no question about it. I think certainly you have to feel as pretty good about this team. As far as where they are and going into the playoffs. And, they certainly had, a great season. Like you guys said, it could have been, better, but, we certainly had a few bad, stretches in there, which, they didn't play, as well as we expect them to. And, and ended up struggling really, especially after the All-Star break. Seemed like they kind of just got bored with the regular season and just wanted to, move on and let the regular season end and get to the playoffs. Which, I mean, for a team that's won as many as much as they had, and it was gone as far and this deep into the playoffs as much as they had with all the Eastern Conference Finals trips and the Finals trip last year, that feel like is, common for, a team that's won and accomplished as much as they have. Now, I wanted to ask you, Josue, are there any sort of concerns and things that, you worry about, or that Celtics fans should worry about with this team, going into the playoffs? Because there were, a few things that happened, or that, during those bad stretches that kind of, feel like fans should be, worried about, a little bit going into the playoffs. How do you feel about that?
Well, outside of the offense just going stagnant and going stale, I mean, the way this team is defending, I think it's encouraging. I mean, what Joe Mazzulla said to end the season, the fact that this team was able to finish top 5 on offense, top 5 in defense, the way he sees an ideal championship team, and the fact that they're able to hit those strides or hit that benchmark is significant. And I believe that to an extent, because it's easy, or I shouldn't say easy, but for the Celtics team, it was easy to see how they were able to take things up a notch offensively, right? I mean, they got out to a historic start. The way they were blowing out teams, the way they were putting up, the offensive rating was through the roof, historic, right? Over 120 points. I know the Sacramento Kings did slightly better, but it was still a lot for a team that had gone through everything that they went through with Ime Udoka, and here now Joe Mazzulla put in that position. But these guys are just ready to rock and roll. Like, they were ready because of what happened last season. And then you look at throughout the struggles, because we knew that wasn't realistic. They weren't going to be able to maintain that. And when you saw things even out, the Celtics team still managed to find ways to win. I think that's a strong indication of their identity, especially when they rely on the defensive end of the floor, when the defense leads to offense, and when they're getting out in front of the opposing teams. Guys like Tatum, Brown, obviously, their athleticism and who they are as scorers just speak for himself, and they're able to get out to those easy and get those easy buckets. So I feel like that when it comes to who they are defensively, they're not the team that we saw last season, but overall they're definitely a better offensive team this time around. Guys like Malcolm Brogdon and Derek White sort of emphasize that outside of their all-star duo, but then also because of that offense, right? But then also because what they're able to do defensively, or what we've seen in stretches, you're confident that, man, this team can really hold opposing teams to 100, anywhere between 105 points or sometimes even somewhere near 100 points, where a lot of teams just can't do that. You know, they have to go out and beat you with their offense, whereas the Celtics can give you a little bit of both on both ends and maintain that distance to bring home a win. So I think that's going to be interesting to see what happens throughout the best of 7 series, where you're going up against the same team, obviously for a coach to make adjustments, and seeing how Joe Mazzulla is going to react to those adjustments should be interesting for a rookie head coach going into the playoffs.
Yeah, no question about it. That's, certainly, something that really interests me, and I'm sure interests a lot of people who, have followed this team and cover, the team like yourself is, how is, Joe Mazzulla going to adjust to, the playoff basketball, since this is his first, post-season run, with him being a rookie head coach. I know obviously he's been an assistant for a few, runs, but that's obviously not the same as being the head guy. Now, so, definitely that's certainly something to keep an eye on, and it's going to be interesting to see on how that, ends up playing out and turning out, as this postseason run goes along for this team. Now, wanted to ask you, like, how do you feel about Joe Mazzulla? What are your thoughts on him, as, far as, what you've seen from him so far, and also what he needs to, improve on, as we start this postseason run, this weekend? And then do you worry about this team living and dying by the 3 too much in the postseason, like I feel like they kind of did in the regular season? Was that something that could be a concern when the playoffs start?
It's definitely one of those things that you got to keep a close eye on. Lately, that hasn't been the case. When you see chucking up 50, anywhere between like 45, 50. I mean, you remember those nights? I mean, that's when you're like, man, they're just they're being lazy. Like that. That's part of those symptoms for losses that I mentioned earlier, especially when you're seeing it throughout the first half, and you're like, man, that's just the type of energy that they're bringing. It's fool's gold sometimes, right? Especially again when things are going the other way in the first half, right? When they're clicking and they're hitting anywhere between 10, 11, 12 3-pointers before halftime. That could be something that you go into the second half, and if it's not there, you don't make the proper adjustments for high percentage looks. That's how another team can get back in from a deficit. So I mean, it'll be interesting to see the free flowing offense. It's just sort of the environment that Joe Mazzulla has built, right? So it really does boil down to these guys. I mean, let's face it, he's not going to be someone that gets in people's faces and tells them to stop shooting. He encourages this behavior. The quality of the looks it's always been his thing. If it's open, if it's a good look, he doesn't mind it. If the team gets back in defense and creates another possession, then that's the goal. You know what I mean? It's like to maximize as many possessions as possible, get as many attempts as possible is more of the emphasis. And if it's a clean look, if it's a quality shot, then he's never going to say it was a bad shot. He'll never label it that. And that was a lot of his philosophy was challenged, right, by reporters, by guys who were questioning him, or at least questioning what the team was doing and how long he was going to let them do their thing, right? But they adjusted, they corrected those bad mistakes. Are they a team that lives and die by the 3? Occasionally, right? I don't know if we can still say that, but it was a big part of their identity, no question, especially a couple of months ago, or at least going into the All-Star break. But they've done their best to sort of rectify that. I mean, the 3-point shot it's a big part of what they do. It's a big part of their offense. And when you have guys, 4 guys that can shoot above 40%, you're gonna maximize that. I mean, Al Horford has maximized it to the extent that it's extended his career, right? To be able to be a knockdown 3-point shooter, one of the most efficient 3-point shooters in the NBA. I mean, it's incredible. It's impressive, but it's also a testament to what this offense, who they are, right? Malcolm Brogdon is not that far behind him. Sam Hauser has evolved into someone that I believe you can trust to come in and knock down a few 3-pointers, when you need it. If it's not there, then, he tries his best to defend, or at least find ways to be productive without the ball in his hand. So, I mean, it's just a big part of what they do, a big part of their offense. But at the end of the day, it comes down to how they execute, and how these two leaders are going to go about their business, right? We're talking about the best scoring duo in the NBA, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown. That's what the playoffs is really about, right? When the guys show up. I mean, it was Jason Tatum with the big shot, with the big game that salvaged that series against the Bucks last year. Jaylen Brown came out big against the Miami Heat. Like in the second half, when a team really needed to rally back. I mean, it boils down to those guys, but in terms of their philosophy and how they execute offensively, I just hope they don't turn into one of those teams that occasionally, or at least not even occasionally, one of those teams that starts chucking up threes and it costs you a game or two throughout this playoffs. I mean, if it costs you a game or two throughout the playoffs, I mean, maybe that happens. You chalk it up as to lazy offense and they just didn't have it that night. But hopefully that doesn't become something that's still a strong part of their identity in the postseason.
No, for sure. I mean,
yeah, it's worth mentioning though, for sure, man. I mean, that was that was driving people crazy because some of those nights it was just like, man, like they were stubborn about it, It's like, no, we're gonna live or die by it. And that was their mentality, and that's such a mantra for young and how should I put this? Young teams, but teams that still have a high roof above them. Whereas the Celtics are much more finished product. They're much more polished. So it was look, teams go through that. It was a part of that, of who they were, but luckily they were able to get out of those bad habits by the end of the season.
I hope they don't. Yeah, that I was one of those people that got on my nerves when they were shooting the threes and they couldn't get away from it. And it seems like Joe Mazzulla is one of those coaches that would rather them shoot the threes instead of taking a layup or a two or something. So it's part of their makeup in a way.
Right. He's never going to be the coach to be like, no more threes, guys.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
He's just not going to do that.
Yeah.
It just goes against his entire philosophy. And then, to be fair, that's how you lose a team, right? When you start contradicting yourself and, when you set this foundation, you've given this guys this freedom, this trust, right? Because of what happened last year, because hey, he's no stranger, right? He was in it with these guys, and obviously that has a lot to do with the team trusting him and believing in him and wanting him to succeed, because the entire transition, I mean, none of that's ideal. I mean, the way he succeeded is obviously incredible. It's impressive, but no one envisions their first head coaching job in the NBA to be off the strength of someone being suspended and ultimately fired, right? I mean, he was thrusted into that spot, but he carried himself gracefully, and honestly, it's impressive. I mean, he's an impressive coach when you consider everything that happened and the fact that at age 34 he was able to pull this off and like I said, pull off a successful regular season.
And to finish up the regular season conversation, I was gonna ask you, who's your MVP of the team for the regular season?
Oh man, that's a good question. Because the NBA is always about like, what have you done for me lately? Like I feel like Tatum, like saying Tatum is like old news. Yeah. And like, it's not to say like he's been trashed in the last like 2-3 weeks or whatever, but like, man, Jalen's been on a tear, man. Like it was incredible. I mean, obviously the interview with the New York Times and the Ringer and the quotes about his future, that spiced it up a bit. Obviously put him under a microscope, but he thrived. I mean, you could call it masked man Jalen, but whatever this era was, I mean, it'll be certainly something that we look back on and think, man, that's what. Hopefully, I'm saying this. I'm saying this before I finish the sentence. Hopefully, we'll look back on this and say, man, that was wild that people thought he wasn't going to get all NBA or that it was in question. Hopefully, we'll look back and laugh, and we're not saying it's unfortunate that he was robbed, because it would be highway robbery if Jalen's not named to one of these all NBA teams. But I mean, I guess you just got to give it to Jason though. I just for overall what he meant to this team, all season long. And Jalen's been great too. He was banged up a little bit. He missed a few games, but at the same time, I mean, he's been right there with them in the sense of leading this team offensively and just coming up big time and time again. Games, a handful of games that would probably put the team under 50 wins. They're solely responsible for that. But I guess I would give the edge to Tatum, but Jalen's not that far behind.
I think Tatum deserves it because he's the only player in Celtic history to average 30 points a season. So that's a big feat right there.
It's impressive.
Yeah. And follow-up question to that: who's your sixth man of the year for the team?
Oh, it's gotta be Malcolm Brogdon. And hopefully that's the case for the NBA, man. What he's done for this team. I mean, it's easy to say this now, but it's still worth daydreaming about for Celtics fans, I guess. If Malcolm Brogdon's on that team last year, man, they win it. They beat the Warriors. I mean, they just needed someone like that. They needed a glue guy. I mean, look, they took their lumps, right? This year's team that goes with it. That was probably that's the biggest one, right? That's what motivated them to be who they are now. So maybe the two go hand in hand, but it's just a perfect match for this Celtics organization and for who Malcolm Brogdon is as a player, as a person in the locker room. Man, he's connected with so many guys, and he's just been the voice that's been steady on both ends of the floor, and you just feel his presence just resonate. When he comes off the bench, the moment he checks in, whether it's rectifying with the offensive direction or just putting together stops that they need on the defensive end, and just being at the right spot. So yeah, certainly it's something that I think he hopefully will be awarded by the NBA, but for sure it's definitely Malcolm Brogdon.
So I'm not gonna disagree with you, but I do think Derek White has been making a fair he's been making a fair contribution to the team to be part of that conversation to be sixth man of the year. What do you think about that?
See, I would agree with you with that because he's been equally as important, but he's also been a starter, man. He's that starting lineup that features him when all the nights that Rob was out, man, it really changed things. And Rob's health essentially opened that door, right? Opened that possibility, and Derek White took full advantage. And that really gave Joe Mazzulla a lot of options. Someone that you can mix and match with the second unit, can be a distributor for you, but can score, can get buckets. And man, he did that a lot this season. And it's impressive, man, for someone to play not only all 82 games, but do it under the conditions that he did it under over the last three months, man. Man, this guy, the neck injury, I thought he suffered a concussion, man. I thought we wouldn't see him for a week. That back-to-back games, or those 2 games in 3 days in Charlotte, he was there ready to go that next game, right? That second game. He had a hole in his eardrum. You guys remember that? It was eardrum.
Yep.
My man played. He just went and man, there's players that will cramp up and be like, yo, I can't go tonight. This dude went out there and played. He sprained his ankle a few weeks back or last month, and it hasn't even affected his production. I mean, that's probably the most impressive thing about it and worth noting. But man, how many players nowadays play all 82 and do it, under the condition that he did and the workload he's been for both, the starter and for that second unit. It's been incredible, man. He named the Eastern Conference Player of the Week. So yeah, I mean, his production, he's just as equally as important to this team. But just because he's been, he's been a consistent contributor to the starting unit, I'll give the edge to Malcolm Brogdon.
All right, and let's move on to the playoffs. We are in the playoffs. We are the number 2 seed. We can possibly face Miami or Atlanta. Is that correct?
That's right. Tomorrow night we'll find out for sure.
So, and I'm pretty sure we all want Atlanta. Am I correct in that?
I mean, Celtics fan, y'all should, but let's make it interesting. Let's see the Heat. Celtics can go out, and you can essentially end the Heat. You know what I mean? You guys know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah. Oh yeah.
probably,
Put out the
there's,
heat. Oh yeah.
there's most likely drastic changes if the Heat are bounced out of the first round. I mean, maybe those are on the horizon regardless, but if they get bounced out of the first round, I mean, they got to start figuring things out here, because getting back to the NBA Finals has been a hurdle, you know, for this team, for this organization. And they were close last year. You know, I respect them not wanting to you know, break this core, but it's the ancillary pieces that haven't really caught up yet, right? Or at least essentially it seemed like they had this huge window or this ceiling above them, and they sort of evened out, right? I mean, Tyler Hero's solid, has been productive, but I mean, you have guys like, you know, Duncan Robinson, you know, guys like who am I going? Gabe Vincent. Look, these are solid players, solid pieces, but I feel like the franchise was waiting for these guys to evolve a bit more, you know, and maybe now it's time for them to figure out those other pieces, you know, outside of Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo. You know, do they trade one of those guys? Do they let one of those guys go? I don't know, but maybe they got to do something else. You know, they got to figure this thing out. You know, as Kyle Lowry is you know, towards the end of his career, and you know, you looking at other guys like what was Kevin Love's on that team, Victor Oladipo. You know, guys that are at like facing or at the tail end of their careers, and you know, they just don't have what they need to keep up with the rest of the Eastern Conference. I mean, look what the Boston Celtics did last summer. Look what the Milwaukee Bucks did last summer, and at the trade deadline, adding Jay Crowder and who else they add? They added someone else too. I know that Miles Leonard and somebody else to another piece, but man, they're just adding pieces after pieces just in case, because they want to match up to Boston so bad, and they want to make sure that they have the strongest team possible. Where I feel like the Miami Heat has really relied more on their culture and keeping guys, you know, pivotal guys together while adding little pieces to just sort of, you know, dot the T's and cross the I's. But now it's getting the oh no, did I say that wrong? Cross the T's and dot the I's. But it's getting to the point. Yeah, I got it right there. It's getting to the point now where you know, it's the chemistry is just not there, you know. But look, they can still give themselves a heck of a series though. Jimmy Butler's still Jimmy Butler. I mean, at the end of the day, the starting five is still solid. But I wouldn't be shocked if the Celtics beat the Heat in 5 or 6. It really wouldn't surprise me, you know?
Yeah, it certainly wouldn't surprise me that I feel like they're, like you were just saying, they're not the same team.
But the Hawks are the easier route. I mean, I'm not going to say like the Heat and Hawks are like, no, I think there's a difference there, especially with the way that the Heat play the Celtics and how this thing's gone down the last, 2 out of the last 3 years. I mean, this thing is personal. I think the Miami Heat, they're very salty about what happened last year, and rightfully so. I mean, Jimmy Butler makes that 3-pointer. Celtics, they don't go to the finals. I mean, we be talking about a completely different narrative right now. So I get that, but I just feel like, man, the Celtics, teams like the Celtics and the Bucks, they've taken things up another level, where the Heat is still trying to just trying to you know, piece together one more run.
Yeah, no, that's what it certainly seems like. And it seems like they're so far away from the top tier teams of the East. Like, you obviously talk about the Celtics, the Bucks, and the Sixers, and it's like they're not even close to any one of those teams. I mean, if you think about it, last year they were the number 1 seed in the East and had home advantage to the conference playoffs. That's why Game 7 last year's Eastern Conference Final was played in Miami, and you know that was certainly a really close and tight and hard-fought and physical series that took everything in the Celtics.
PJ Tucker was on that team. He was shooting about 50% from behind the arc, man. He was a problem, especially in that Celtics series.
He had a really good.
And Eric Spoelstra is also worth mentioning, man. Like, he's such a good coach. He's someone that you got to mention as like a player, right? And like it's a chess match for him. I mean, against him, and that would be a heck of a challenge for Joe Mazzulla. I mean, he put Ime through it last year, whether it was pulling out that zone again or throwing out certain matchups that really gave fits to the Celtics and really their coverages on Jason Tatum. It was effective. I mean, his strategies. I mean, obviously he's up there as one of the best coaches in the NBA. But yeah, I just feel like those pieces, they just don't have that kind of offensive firepower like they had last year. I mean, Max Struss, I mean, he's still on the team, but he's just not the same guy, right? I mean, PJ Tucker, they don't have anymore. You know, Gabe Vincent was like a revelation at the time. You know, I just think they had a lot more like going for them in the sense of like who they were as a team and their identity.
Yeah, no, but sure, no question about it. A lot of those guys have really been disappointing and like underachieve, or just don't even like playing on in their rotation anymore like they were last year. So I feel like that's definitely a reason of why the Celtics shouldn't be as worried, or Celtics fans shouldn't be as worried if they do end up playing. If we do end up playing the Heat in the first round,
but Jimmy Butler will average 36 though, so that should be fun.
That's the thing. He's one of the best playoff players, right? He's a playoff kind of player. Like he takes it,
especially in the first round matchup. Oh man, he's gonna be
averaging
at least 30. Oof.
Oh, yeah.
That's fresh. That's fresh Jimmy buckets going into the postseason. The Celtics got the Eastern Conference Final Jimmy. Like got the this is it, game 7. This is the last. I'm putting everything into the shot Jimmy, and it nearly knocked him out, man. That was a heck of a battle, a duel. And I don't think this would be no different, but I mean, all those games I think go down to the wire for sure. And or maybe you get a blowout. If you get a blowout between those two teams, man, they might be going 6 or 7. But if you're the Celtics, hopefully that's not the case, because unfortunately you don't want to go too deep into the in the first round, and all these playoff runs are exhausting, right? They went to the NBA Finals last year. They went 7 in a couple of those rounds. So I don't know. We'll see. I mean, hopefully they don't have to do something like that in the first round, because I think the rounds 2 and 3 could be just as equally. They could both go 7. We wouldn't be surprised, right? Whether it's Philadelphia, whether it's Milwaukee, I think it would be Milwaukee in the third. But those matchups could definitely go the distance.
Do you have any last? Do you have one last question, Barry?
Yeah, I wanted to ask Jose, how far do you see this team going in the playoffs? Do you like we get back to the finals and avenge that finals loss last year, or do we fall short of that? Like how far do you see this postseason run going? And also, who's your NBA MVP this year? Who do you believe should be the MVP of this season?
Man, I think the Celtics, I think they go back to the finals. I mean, we gotta wait and see what this Phoenix Suns team looks like in the postseason, man. I feel like this is like this is like wrestling. This is like a brand new alliance that just came out of nowhere. It's like, man, where do these guys come from, man? Like it's like we know what they look like. We know how scary they are. That 3-game sample size, that was enough. I don't care. Durant went down, didn't they get to do it for the home team? But I was like, man, this is like, where's the weak spot on offense? Like, it was insane. But how does that look in the best of 7 series? How do they defend in the best of 7 series? I want to see how a team makes adjustments and how a Denver Nuggets team can get the best out of them. So the jury's still out if I can go ahead and say that they're the favorite to win it all. But that's the only team I really see this stopping the Celtics team, if they reach the finals. And I think they will reach the finals. And the Bucks will be their biggest threat for sure. How they defend Tatum and how they're able to slow down Brown, that tandem will be very interesting, because I love the way the Celtics guard Giannis, man. It's like they look forward to this. They've got it down. They have so many reps, under their belt, that they're not only looking forward to that, but they thrive in it. It's like everyone, it's a team thing. It's not just the starters. It's not just a few handful of guys. Everybody gets involved. So I was blown away that last one, man. Like, I've never seen a team defend Giannis that well, to be honest with you guys. So a lot of my confidence in that is off of that, and just how just the depth of the Celtics and how many, when the 3-point shots fall, especially, like, the Bucks just have a really hard time defending the 3. So yeah, I got the Celtics winning winning the East again, get back to the finals, and most likely win it all. I really do feel good about this team. As for MVP, I'm going with Embiid. I think this is it. This is the year, man. This is it. Enough of this. It's not gonna get any better than this. Just give that man his award, man. Like when he's meant to the Philadelphia Sixers team, 76ers team, they wouldn't even be in the mix without this guy. And obviously, that might go without being said, but just in the manner he's doing this right now, like how he's just putting this team on his back on both ends of the floor, it's incredible. It's something that we haven't seen from a center in a long time, just in terms of pure dominance. And he's doing it in a way that I don't know if I've ever seen it before, guys. I mean, have you guys? I mean, like we've seen what a Shaq looks like, right? We've seen what Tim Duncan looks like. I know he's not a center, but like just in terms of like a dominating big man, but we've never seen something quite like this, right? Can put the ball on the floor, beat you off the dribble, can score 4 or 5 3-pointers on you in one night, you know what I mean? Can go efficient with 20 for 25 against the Celtics, 20 for 24, drop 52, like is nothing, get to the free throw line. Like it's been a while. I mean, Anthony Davis maybe when his prime or when, the good old days, something similar, but the way he's put this whole thing together, man, it's impressive. So that's my guy. For a while, it was a 2-man race between him and Jokic, but he passed Jokic a couple months ago, or at least a month ago, if you ask me, man. So that's my MVP.
Oh, thank you very much, Josue.
No problem.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, man. Appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad you guys you guys are sticking with it, man. You know how it goes. Sometimes people do podcasts for a little bit, 6 months or a year later, they're not doing it anymore. So I'm glad you guys still doing it, and I'm happy to see y'all growth, man. I've seen a lot of the guests you guys had on, man. That's pretty cool.
I appreciate it. Truly appreciate it. Well, thank you very much, Josue. And we'll watch the playoffs, and hopefully we get a good long series until mid-June.
Yeah, I'm just hoping. I'm hoping for that, and I'm hoping I'm going to Miami, fellas. To be honest with you. So let's see if the Heat can make my dreams come true tomorrow night, or if not, man, I guess I can go to Atlanta. Not the worst place.
Secondary option, the ATL. That's a nice city too.
I guess it's a win-win. It's a win-win for us Celtics reporters for sure.
For sure. So you'll be traveling pretty much, and on all the road games and covering every single.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's gonna be a long run. One thing I learned about last year, man. It's a lot. It's exhausting, but at least I got that rep under my belt. So I'm feeling like shit. I feel like one of these Celtics players, man. I'm ready to go. I know I've been through it. You know what I mean? Like I needed that experience.
Well, for sure, man. For sure.
Battle tested now, I guess.
Right. That's true. Right. I'm sure now you're just as motivated as the players.
Yeah.
And want to avenge that final loss and get back, to the finals and and with that chip, so you're just as focused and locked in as those guys. And
absolutely.
and willing to go through that grind, because the postseason certainly is a grind. And I know you and this team is certainly built for that, and ready to do something special this time around.
Definitely, man. Definitely can't wait, man.
If that happens.
Definitely. But thanks again, fellas, man. I appreciate it, man. Y'all have a good one.
Thank you, bro. Appreciate it. And keep doing your thing on the Garden Report. I'm a big fan of you guys and watch you guys.
Oh, man. Thank you, man. Thanks, Barry. Appreciate it, man.
Doing a great job on there with you and the rest
Thanks,
of the team. So keep doing your thing with that. I love watching you guys on there, and I'll definitely continue to watch you guys, through this postseason run. So I'm looking forward to it.
Sounds good, man. See y'all, fellas.
Thank you, Jose.
See you, man. Have a good night. Take care, man. Good seeing you, bro.
You too, man.
All
Awesome.
right. That was great. That was Josue Pavón. Great reporter, great writer for CLNS Media. That was a great interview. Yeah, well, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for following us. Follow us on all social media platforms, and please subscribe and like this video, and we'll be back next week. Thank you, Barry. John, we miss you. See you next episode.
Yep. See you next week. Have a good week, everyone. See y'all next week. Thanks for watching. Thanks for